The session starts January 6th and is scheduled to conclude on March 9th. Committee meetings are going to start, I believe, September 20th. Isn't that right, Rick?
Yes.
So we're going to start with committee meetings September 20th, and then they will have them every month leading up to session. So to begin coordination of our discussions with members of the legislature and the governor, we put a list in your package that assigns certain board members to meet with specific legislators. We hope by starting like this, we'll maximize our ability to communicate a consistent and convincing message about the value of investing in our universities with adequate investment in the state university system. First, we are asking the legislature to provide funding to the universities in order to maximize their potential to positively affect the state's economy. We are also seeking changes in statutes which will help make the university stronger, which will increase their ability to provide private sector jobs and graduate the talent necessary to fill those jobs. Some of the issues include addressing concurrency, PICO, funding for student life facilities at our universities, and a few others. And Rick's going to go over those in a few minutes. And frankly, a lot of these were on our legislative agenda for last year. We're going to have to assure the legislature that we're promised that we're going to make good on our promises about accountability. So therefore, our discussions with the members will cover a group of strategies that demonstrate that we are willing to be held accountable. We're not just asking for a handout from the legislature. And so Rick's going to go through some of those strategies as well. So if there are no questions at this point, I'm going to ask Rick to go through the various points of the proposal. All right, Rick?
Thank you, sir. There are 5 issues where we'll be seeking some kind of change to law, so I'll go through those and also talk about what the chair brought up as our promise to we say we're going to need some strategies that the system put in place. First on the issues. Concurrency, if you recall, was on the agenda last year. And what we're seeking again is an exemption from paying for the concurrency requirements. Remember that there used to be a University Concurrency Trust Fund, and it was funded by a surcharge on local option sales tax, fuel tax. And that has been discontinued, and the trust fund was repealed. Therefore, currently do not have a means of paying for those infrastructure improvements that result from university construction. This repeal would allow the universities to construct their facilities and not impede the progress that we need to both house our students and faculty and our research. Any questions on that issue?
Good afternoon. This is Frank, and before we leave that one, I just wanted to say I've gotten some feedback from at least one member of the board who has expressed concerns on this one that indeed, rather than putting the local governments in peril, as far as he was concerned, we should really question the issue of repeal of this language. I don't disagree with that. Unfortunately, unless there is another source of revenue created to put on the table to meet these obligations in terms of concurrency, we're put in a position where literally people don't have the money in order to do these things. So I think priority would be to restore the concurrency trust fund. We ran at that last year. We didn't make any headway. So this is the fallback position, but without it, we're still required to meet the concurrency obligations with no source of revenue to do that. And as you have all seen, the PICO funding is in desperate straits, and if a university is forced to make concurrency payments, they're going to be taking it out of their infrastructure money, which means it's going to be coming money that is supposed to be used for the deferred maintenance of their facilities, which is counterproductive. So at the risk of making it sound like we're just blithely telling them it's easier to live with no concurrency requirements, we understand the net impact that has, but without any other way to do this, keeping us in the position of having to meet these concurrency obligations puts us in not just a jeopardy situation, a double jeopardy situation based on the only places we could go for the money to meet these obligations as they exist today.
Frank, there's another side of this some of us have seen. I don't know whether it's peculiar to Orange County or not, but we've ponied up money out of the concurrency fund and had it spent in parts of the county far removed from UCF. There's no guarantee at all that they're going to spend it to overcome so-called problems that are created by your development. They may spend it miles and miles away from your campus.
Thanks, Dr. Hitt.
This is Maury Hosseini. The one issue that we ought to consider is this. Many counties in the state are coming up with stop charging concurrency and impact fees. Or not charging for a couple of years, or totally abolish them. So one of my suggestions is maybe we ought to look at a law that university that wants to build buildings that they will not be subject to concurrency. It is much easier to do it that way. It's a law you pass versus you fund it. You actually give money out of your pocket. Have you considered that?
Yes, sir. In fact,
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about doing that very thing with this repeal.
Maury, in the past, we got money from the state to fund it, but now we're saying. Last year we asked them the state to either give us money to fund it or to repeal it. Well, they didn't give us money to fund it, so now we're saying, repeal the requirement that we pay a concurrency, and the state and local government's going to oppose that.
It will surprise you, Dean, because a lot of the counties, they're looking for jobs. They're desperately looking for jobs. And you may see a surprise that they do want to see building, so that you may see them agreeing. Now, what I was saying that is that instead of repealing it, to be on, maybe it's the same thing. Maybe we'll say is that the universities are not subject to impact fee or subject to concurrency and that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir. I think I understand what you're referring to, and we'll certainly pursue that as one of the options.
Okay.
The next issue has to do with maintenance and construction of SUS facilities, and I don't have any specific recommendation for you because there are two things occurring. One, the facilities committee, the board's facilities committee, is going to address PICO this week in Miami, and two, the Senate has an interim project whereby they are looking at PICO and hopefully coming up with some recommendations that would provide a more consistent level of funding for PICO. And so as a result of the board's facilities committee and hopefully what comes out of the Senate committee, then this body can take that forward as part of the agenda. Then the third issue is the Capital Improvement Trust Fund, and there is a fee that students pay that goes into that fund, and that money is used to construct student life facilities. And these are things like student unions that provide for a quality of life for the students at our universities. The problem with the fund as it stands is that the current level of payment was set in 1988, and it's a total of $4.76 per credit hour, and it has not changed since 1988. Interestingly, the Florida Student Association has on their agenda for this session the increase in the CITF fee, Capital Improvement Trust Fund fee, and I believe Governor Long may have some comments regarding that.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. As Rick said, we are supporting an increase in the Capital Improvement Trust Fund this year with our legislative agenda. But there were a few things that I wanted to bring to the committee if you all would like to. The Florida Student Association Board has decided that although we do believe the Capital Improvement Trust Fund fee is necessary due to the extreme need for student life facilities, we wanted to make sure that students were involved at both steps of the process. So at the first step, making sure that students can afford to pay the fee. For example, some student body presidents have voiced some concerns, and given this hypothetical example, let's say this year, with tuition raising 15% and then a reduction of 20% in Bright Futures, many student body presidents would not have supported an increase in CITFC because they've seen students having drastic financial difficulties with the significant increase in just a one-year period of time. With that being said, we'd like to be involved in developing the language to try and make sure that students are involved at the university level, determining whether or not the fee is the best thing for students in the specific year. Also, the board wanted to make sure that students were involved in the planning process of where the CITFC would go. I know at my university in Florida, and another example at Florida International University, the committees are usually made up of 50% students plus one to make sure that students do have a great deciding factor in where that money goes.
Governor Long.
Rick?
Yes, sir.
With regard to the governor's comments, are those consistent with the way the legislation we saw last year on this?
Yes, sir, they are, and we'll work with Governor Long to make sure the language includes proper involvement of the students.
Okay. Hey, before we go on, and Rick continues, if we're hearing somebody type, so if you would mute your lines, that'd be great. So we can, because people are speaking over this, we can hear a keyboard. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fourth issue deals with Major Gifts and Cortellus, and these are two matching programs whereby we get donations into the universities, and those donations are matched by the legislature. But we have not received matches in either of those programs for several years, and in fact, last session the legislature suspended both programs, and they're slated to be reinstated only after, I think, $200 million of the existing backlog is met. And we don't have high hopes for getting any matching funds this year, but we want to make sure that the legislature remembers that this is very important to the university, so we want to keep it on the agenda, keep it in the limelight.
This is an area that obviously everybody feels strongly about and would be easy to say, well, we know we're not going to get it, and so let's stop nagging about it. I think all of us are afraid that the first time we don't nag, that's going to be taken as a suggestion that we're no longer interested. So I guess if we're going to fall on one side of the issue or the other, we ought to stay on this issue. They did take the step last year of officially suspending the program, which was the first official act they've taken on this issue in years. And they did it specifically to say we're not abandoning the program. It's still there, and when we can fund it, we will. So we wanted to stay on this, even though our hopes for funding it are marginal. We thought it was important to stay with it.
And the last substantive issue is one that's new to the board, and it deals with trying to secure an open records exemption for university researchers, both faculty and staff, who deal with animals. Across the nation, there is an increase in what you might consider harassment, and in some cases, a lot more, leading to firebombing of homes for some of the researchers that are involved. So right now we're concerned because the home addresses, of our faculty are in fact public records. This simply asks that those home addresses not be part of the public record. It's a very narrow request. We realize that asking for any exemption to the through our open records law is something that's considered very seriously, and it's not one that we would request lightly. But we think it's important to protect the safety of our faculty researchers.
This one sounds relatively easy, but I can assure you, anytime you are asking for any sort of an exemption from public records, open records, the First Amendment folks scrutinize these very carefully. So while it sounds like a very reasonable thing to do, we just wanted to make sure you understood the ones that seem most reasonable sometimes aren't accepted readily.
All right. And the last thing next to last thing I want to do was give you just a real thumbnail sketch of what's been titled as Building a New Florida Economy. And these are strategies for leveraging the state universities, both in terms of actual job development and development of talent. And there are four major areas of strategy that we're looking at. One is working to create more private sector jobs through organized and increased research, innovation, and commercialization of university products. Number two, increasing the development of talent that would be needed for a more robust knowledge and innovation economy. And number three, ensuring that the quality of our universities moves forward and that we don't lose ground. And fourth, to ensure that we have adequate facilities for both instruction and research within our university. And I'll give you just a couple of specific examples. Under creating more private sector jobs, Chancellor Brogan has asked that each university identify its major research strengths, and we have that in the packet for you. And you can see what the university self-identified as some of their major strengths. We think this helps because it allows us to know at a glance what universities are consider themselves leaders in various fields. The Chancellor has also spoken regularly about beginning some kind of consortium where universities are the lead for specific areas of endeavor. The best example right now is space and space technology. As you're aware, we've lost over 10,000 jobs at NASA, and the shuttle program has ended. And the Chancellor's vision would be that one of the universities or two of the universities would be the lead in space and space technology research and development, and get into some of the manufacture of products that result from our research. And in commercialization, there's been some complaint from potential investors that the process commercializing, negotiating with the universities, too much red tape. So we could take a look at that process, all the universities, to see if we could make it a more friendly process for them, and having the Chancellor's office be involved in helping the collaboration, moving technology products to the market. Each of our universities has an office or personnel that are responsible for that, and we're simply talking here, maybe there's something to be gained if we work together with them out of the Chancellor's office to do that. And the title of increasing the development of talent, a couple of things that we want to do is look to graduate more students in the STEM fields and improve our overall graduation and retention rate, with particular focus on getting people to complete their degrees. And there's a pipeline issue here too, and that's the matter of getting students who come out of the K-12 system interested in science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines. So we propose working with our K-12 partners to do that, and also looking at the differential tuition and using what currently exists in law to maybe provide tuition incentives to entice students to study in the STEM field. And of course, we don't want to forget quality of our university, so we have a few things that we believe we can do. Some of these things we've already started doing. Some things we'll start to do. but aimed at making sure that our universities are as good as they can be. And then, of course, focusing on making sure we get the facilities we need to make all this happen. And are there any questions on that part?
Sounds like a pretty good piece for our strategic planning.
This is Frank. Exactly. The continued need to refine the differentiated missions of each of the universities, not to the exclusion of anything, but the better identification of undergraduate, graduate research programming that are really either individually niche special on a national and international scale, and or consortium special. For example, a university may be doing biotech not on an international or national scale, but as part of a consortium of other Florida universities, are an important and integral part of that niche area for the state. So yes, sir, all of this is meant to take the work plans of the universities and continue to refine this process through strategic planning to make sure that we can better identify and better coordinate the activities, undergraduate, graduate, and research of the system.
Any questions on that part? And then just one more part to cover.
Excuse me, this is Representative Michelle Raywinkle-Vasselin, and I just joined the phone call a little bit ago, but I didn't want to break in, but I wanted to let you know I was here.
Hello, Representative.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, it's Frank. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Frank. I'm just listening in. It sounds like good stuff, but I didn't want you to not know I was here, so I'm here.
Oh, we were just going to start talking about you, but we can change the subject now and talk about something else.
Sorry, I didn't mean to break in. Go ahead. There you are.
Hey, this is Abe at the Orlando Business Journal. Can you guys hear me?
We've got you. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. My question was for the CITF proposals. Have you guys had conversations about anyone who's potentially looking to introduce the legislation, or is it too early for that?
You know, that's a good question, and with all of this, we're not to that stage yet. This is sort of an evolutionary process. You first decide what your legislative agenda is going to look like, you get support for that, and then you actually begin to put it out there in terms of actual legislative language, and then seek sponsors for all of that.
Okay.
Still too early, but soon.
All right.
Rick, you want to go through the last one?
Yes, sir. The last thing I'll just point out is a calendar, the last 2 pages of your packet, where we've identified with certain board members would be responsible for communicating with some of the legislators. This does a couple of things for us. One is when we need to get to a wide audience fairly quickly, we're already organized to make that happen, because I think in no cases is a board member having to contact more than 3 legislators. And you'll also notice that Chancellor Brogan has a host of legislators next to his name, so he will be extremely busy continually communicating with legislators about what is important to the state university system. And I also wanted to point out one last thing. If you look at the top 3, where you see our chair, Ava Parker, and Chancellor Frank Brogan meeting with the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and the Governor, that is part of what was agreed to when the board, the legislature, and the Governor signed the governance agreement. It's part of the recognition that if we're going to have a world-class university system, and if that system is going to help the state of Florida move forward, then we had to have cooperation, collaboration, and communication at the highest levels of state government. So all the parties involved are extremely committed to making sure that these things happen. And I just want to point that out, because it's kind of key in all of this, all of our discussions here. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Folks, what I'm going to need ultimately is a motion to approve this legislative agenda to go to the board at the board meeting next week. So can I get that motion, and then we'll have a discussion?
So moved.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Anything you think we need to add or delete? not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. We've got a busy 3 days or 2 days in Miami coming up this week. So I look forward to seeing everybody. Is any further discussion? If not, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and then tell everybody if they have any trouble when they get to Miami to call me at home on my cell phone, and I'll take care of you.
In Miami, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I know. But I'll be happy to take care of everybody when you get there. We'll invite the press, so it'll be all noticed properly.
Mr. Chairman, this is Frank. I did get your message, and we're doing some homework to try to discern as much as we can about that thing.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Governor Colson, I have a quick question. This is Teresa Marcinberg from the Florida Channel. Did you say you'll be voting on this next week?
This week.
It's this week. That's what okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I must have misspoke.
You did, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All righty. See everybody in a few days.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.